Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of PEPTalk, Productive Environment Podcast. I am Andrea Anderson, CEO of Productive Environment Institute, and I'm joining you today from Carolina Beach, North Carolina.
And I'm Barbara Hemphill, founder of Productive Environment Institute, coming from Raleigh, North Carolina.
And we are super excited to introduce you to our guest today, Kathy Muzik. And Kathy, where are you joining us from today?
I am joining from the Chicago area, just north of Chicago.
Perfect. All right. So some of you may know Kathy. If you are in our Productive Environment Network, you no doubt have seen her articles and some audios, and she's one of our certified productive environment specialists as well. And of course, this is one of our consultant. This interview is part of our consultant collection series. And so Kathy has been one of our veteran consultants in the when we say consultant, we're referring to our certified productive environment specialist program. And outside of Productive Environment Institute, a consultant we're referring to as a productivity consultant, an organizing consultant. And we're going to talk a little bit about kind of what the difference between those two terms are in just a few minutes. But Barbara, do you have anything to say before I jump in and start asking Kathy some questions?
Well, I'm just so happy to have Kathy here because we've had a long connection now. I've even had the privilege of meeting with her in Chicago a few times to have some conversations, which always makes things special. I love to meet people in person, but she's a living example of what the Productive Environment Institute training program can enable other people to do. So Kathy, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So Kathy, if you would just take a minute to introduce yourself, give people your background, and then we're going to kind of get into where you enter our world. And we've got some questions for you about that. But before that, what was your life like before that, Kathy? And also, well, anyway, go ahead.
Okay.
I'll hold it.
So I am the founder of New Path Productivity here in the Chicago area. But before I founded New Path, I actually had a career in human resources. So that was what I was degreed in college, and spent a fabulous 35-year career in HR. I've always felt drawn that my purpose is to add value to others. And I believe that's what led me to being a hospital volunteer in my teenage years. And that's what led me to my HR career, because it felt like I was helping the organization and I was helping people at the same time. So it's always been a draw. One of my favorite quotes is from a gentleman named Peter Matheson. And the quote is, "The purpose of our life is to help others through it." And I've always felt drawn to that as kind of my purpose. So everything I try to do, I try to do with the purpose of adding value.
I love it. I love that. So you're humming along in your career. You don't look old enough to have a 35-year career.
That's what I was going to say. Everybody's going to say, she was a career for 35 years.
Let's just get that out on the table. But you're like cruising along in your career. You're married. You're living near Chicago. You've got this, you work in corporate. Basically, you were in the corporate
Right.
world. Pre-COVID, so you were driving in and going to an office every single day, for however long that was. And then at what point did the idea of becoming a productivity consultant, or I think first it was organizing consultant first, and then where did that come from? And just kind of lead us through that piece.
Well, probably about 25 years into my HR career, it took me quite some time, obviously, but it dawned on me that I had become like a go-to person for my colleagues, asking me how I did it. And they were asking me, how do you find information so fast? How do you never lose anything? And a lot of it was because I never forgot the things they were supposed to get to me either. So that was always a little frustrating because I never forgot that stuff either. But they would come to me and say, how do you do it? My desk was always pretty clean, partially because of the confidentiality of HR things. And it's a natural human tendency that when people would come into my office, your eyes, their eyes would kind of wander around the desk. So people's security of their information and their privacy was always very important to me. So I always kept things very tucked away, very neat, so that when other folks came in, confidential information was not out on display. But I've just kind of naturally been able to put those things together, put those systems in place where if it's not here, I know it should be here. And if it's not in those two places, I know I don't have it. So some of those things worked very well for me in my HR career, and people would come and ask me about it. So it finally dawned on me that this must be a skill that's coming naturally to me that doesn't necessarily come naturally to others, because so many people were asking me about it.
Yeah, similar situation. And with my job, I was the one organizing everybody, and then they were going like, "How do you what systems do you use?" And I was oblivious to the fact that there was even that this was an industry that Barbara had launched years before that. Like I didn't know it existed. So it sounds like you were that. So if you guys are watching this and you are that go-to person at your job, and you're thinking, you might want to capitalize on that, because who knew that this exciting career was even out there? So, so at what point then did you actively start looking, and how did that search begin? What did that look like?
Well, I wasn't aware. I had heard of the organizing industry before. I had not really heard of the productivity industry as we know it now, but I'd heard of the organizing industry. So I started New Path originally as New Path Organizing, because I didn't really realize that the productivity piece existed. So I started New Path Organizing in August of 2015. It became an LLC in September. And in early October, I was just Googling organizing systems, and PEI came up. And I started to dive more deeply into the PEI website. And I realized, oh my goodness, these are some of the things that I do myself already, but I had never considered the way they all worked together as a system to be keeping me on track. It was not in my conscious awareness that these really were all elements of one overall system that worked together. So to me, it was just like this light bulb went off, and the productivity piece for me is much more resonant than residential organizing, which is where I thought I would have to be going. And I immediately made a pivot, and so that was early October. By I think the second or third week of October, I was on the phone with you, Andrea, and I'm like, I need to be a CPS.
Yep. And then so wait, let's back up. So timeline: August, you got your business name. September, you started your business. You actually launched your business. October, you found Barbara. You found PEI online. Late October, you and I have a conversation about the CPES program. November, you're here in Carolina Beach, North Carolina, with all of us for our retreat.
Yeah, because you were having an on-site business retreat, the Less Clutter, More Clients, I believe it was, or Less Clutter, More Cash Flow may have been that one. And it was in early November of 2015. So it was probably 2-3 weeks tops between you and I talking, and my butt was in the seat in Carolina Beach learning PEI systems.
And the rest of the system. And, I just have to say, Kathy, you brought up, one of the favorite words in PEI, which is system. We talk about that all the time, and we use the acronym of saving you space, time, energy, and money. And, whenever there's anything you do repeatedly, you need a system. And to your point, so many people in the world have no clue about, well, they don't even know they need one. They've never been taught that. Unfortunately, it's not something we teach in school. I remember working with a pediatric physician, surgeon, and I was helping him create what we call a finding system for organizing his medical records, medical articles, the journals, all those piles of journals that he had, piles and piles. When he's done, he said, they never taught us that in medical school. And it's true. So I was blessed to have parents who taught me, but if you didn't have anybody to teach you, so thanks for using one of our favorite words.
Well, and I was doing it and didn't even know that's what I was doing. So I can't even imagine how confusing it is and what a struggle it is for folks that may not have some of those natural tendencies toward a system like that. I was doing it and didn't even realize that's what it was. So
yeah.
So, and it is what's attractive to people. I often say great leaders create great cultures. And you were a leader in HR. I mean, that's why you went from continuing to grow in your position and having hundreds of employees, because they saw you as a great leader. And it was because of systems. Leaders are responsible for putting in systems. And the other thing you brought up, which I think is really important, is that sometimes the things that we do naturally, we undervalue, because we don't think. I remember thinking when I started in residential, it's like, this is just common sense and people are going to pay me for this. It's like, this doesn't make any sense. But then I remember my daddy on the farm used to say, well, common sense is not always so common.
And we all have different strengths. So while this is my particular strength, others have strengths that I need to turn to them for help. Yep. So that's how we all together we are better, right, Barbara? That's your
absolutely. That is absolutely what it's about.
So okay, so then you came here and your mind is blown. You're like, these are my people. This is
100%.
Right? Where has this been all my life? That's exactly how I felt. And so then you went back home and you had a full-time job pretty much this whole time until recently. And so what do you say, Kathy, to, we do have people that come that are interested in, kind of hanging out their own shingle, starting their own business, getting certified. We have a certification program. So that's the other thing. Like if anybody's watching this and you're wanting to, you like the idea of becoming a productivity consultant, but you don't know where to start. Like what do you even learn? What do you do? Where do you start? That's what we do. That's what our certified productive environment specialist program is all about. So we teach you that piece. So you took the training, you got certified through our training, which is virtual. So people can take it, it's self-paced, but you've got us, you've got a whole group of people helping you. You did that with your full-time job.
Right.
And then you have been building your business with a full-time job. And I remember that, and maybe you can kind of lead into this, but to go back to the training piece first, talk about how you manage that with your job. And then also the next step would be, how in the world did you, because I know you and I have had conversations through these years about negotiating your schedule, having conversations with your superiors about, how did you make it work? And so for people that are thinking, well, I need to wait until I retire, or I need to, I couldn't start that because I have all these other things I'm doing, or I start when the kids go back to school, or when the kids get out of school, or whatever the postponed decision excuse is. What would you share with them to kind of overcome some of those things?
Well, I think first and foremost, the way PEI has structured the CPS certification program makes it incredibly easy to weave into real life. So it's a combination of, video instruction. There are physical activities that you perform yourself. I was trying to juggle a 40-hour per week, usually more corporate job, time with family and friends, the CPS certification, just everyday life. I am a morning person, so I would watch the videos in the morning, and then I would do the activities on the weekends. And it took me about 6 months to be certified. I started the program in November of 2015, and I finished my certification in April of 2016. And I believe that now it's even more streamlined, because I think there was part of the certification that I went through that is no longer required. It's something that can be done, but it's not required for the certification. So now it's even easier to get through that process. And there's so much support from you, from Barbara, from the other CPSs. I mean, it's an incredibly supportive environment. And for me, in terms of a job, so I had to be very intentional with my time. I mean, truly, that's really what it boiled down to, was that I had to be intentional with my time. So I was very conscious of how I was using my time, and I wanted to make sure I was maximizing it to its full potential, because I really wanted this. I wanted this so badly. I felt like I belonged with PEI. People say I found my tribe, and it is really true. It's a wonderful group. And so, yeah, it's challenging, and I'm not going to say that it was easy to do it, but with intention, it can be done. It can be done to juggle those things. And then it's just that duration for the certification. And then from there, it's whatever you want to do with it. So it's not rigid. You're not being forced into doing anything in a particular timeline. You know, you and Barbara have always understood life is happening alongside this. So things happen at your own pace. But I was very fortunate that once I achieved my certification, just a few months later, I received a phone call from a CFO I had worked for with another organization, and he wanted to come lead the HR team where he was currently working. And I had explained that I had just started my side business, and that it felt uncomfortable for me to consider coming into his organization, knowing I would eventually have the intent to leave. I said, you know, it's one thing when you're coming into an organization and, you know, you're thinking you're going to be there for years and years and years. And I said, my intent would be to leave, and that feels strange to me. So, you know, I'm not really comfortable to leave. And a few days later, he called me back and he said, we want you here. What would we have to do to make that happen? And I said, how does a 32-hour work week sound? That way it leaves me one full business day a week to work on my business. He said, sold. That's where I went. They completely honored those boundaries. At one point, that business was acquired by another company, actually, during the pandemic, and they continued to honor that 32-hour week schedule. But they asked me why that was important to me. And my comment to them was, well, number one, having that separation between my business life and my personal life has always been very important to me. But I said, in the last probably three to 4 years before that acquisition, I had seen so many people that I knew pass away before the age of 65. And they had put so much of life on hold, saying, I'll do that when I retire. I'll relax when I retire. I won't work 16 hours a week or 16 hours a day after I retire. Well, they never got to retirement. And I thought to myself, this is not just because I don't want to work 40 plus hours a week for someone else. I want that time for me. That's intentional time for me to enjoy my life.
Yeah.
I want to put that on hold. So
I think you're using a word there again too. I love the language you're using, Kathy. Language is so important, and you're using the word intentional. And, you know, I think one of the things that's happened in our culture, and partly it's COVID, I think, had a lot to do with it, when people got out of routines, and it was just like they were just coping. And when you're just coping, it's kind of hard to be intentional, although that's the solution to coping. When you are coping, it's being intentional. And being intentional is what makes our tagline is accomplish your work and enjoy your life. And that is about being intentional about what does that mean. And Kathy, you've done a great job of saying, this is what it means to me. I want to accomplish my work and enjoy my life before retirement, because I don't know what's going to happen. And none of us know. And, you know, it makes me so sad when I hear somebody say, I have to go to work. It just hurts my heart when I hear that, because I am such a believer that God created every one of us to do work, but it's work that we enjoy. And so we can accomplish our work. And that's part of the reason that consulting is such a phenomenal opportunity. And one of the things I like about the CPS program, and I've said it often, is that I think of it as two fists. And this fist is the CPS training. This is what we do. This is foundational to every single individual and every single business. It applies everywhere because we're helping manage information and time and projects. And then you come in and you bring in your personality, your experience, your passion. I mean, you're wanting to add value to others in the way that you want to do it. And then that means that you, Kathy Muzik, are unlike any other consultant in the world. So it's really unique, and you can be intentional, and you don't have to take all clients. In fact, one of the things we specialize in our program is helping people figure out who they're going to serve. And we discourage taglines like we organize homes and offices. You know, like say, I joked to someone years ago, that's the road to burnout and bankruptcy. But on the other hand, looking for special people and being intentional is really important. So you do an awesome job of role modeling that, Kathy.
And that's a good segue into what was going to be my next question. So, and I think to carry on with what you just said, Barbara, we don't say, you know, we can organize everyone and anyone. It's like that doesn't, that first of all, that doesn't help people refer business to you because they can't think of who everyone and anyone is. So I think, Barbara, it was a marketer that said, if you market to everyone, you market to no one. Yeah. So like really zeroing in on who you were meant to serve, who were you put on this earth to help. So Kathy, what types of people do you love to work with? Who is your choice client?
Absolute, hands down, women small business owners. Mm-hmm. Even in my HR career, working with small businesses has just been my favorite niche to be in.
Yeah.
And I really see the services I provide as being that analogy of a ripple, that for every woman small business owner that I help, she feels a sense of peace and calm and control over her space, time, and information. And that ripples out to her entire team, her family, and then her sense of peace and calm ripples out to the people who report to her. And then they take that peace and calm home to their families and their coworkers. And I just see just a positive vibe continuing to ripple out from the epicenter of those that I'm able to work with. And that's really important to me, to feel like I'm giving people more of a sense of calm and control. And I mean, I'm actually also in training right now to become a certified life coach, which I think is an additional element that I can bring to my services that can continue and even expand that further. So I just feel like it's just a positive ripple, and however I can help improve their life, it then improves the lives of everyone around them as well.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. You're kind of famous in our world, in our community, as the weekly review girl. Maybe not in those terms, but your consistency is admirable. You are extremely consistent. So we have systems, right? Saving you space, time, energy, and money. But part of the next step is anybody can learn the system, right? You learn the system, but you've got to be able to continue implementing it consistently. And the two things that stand out to me about you that you're so consistent with is your weekly review. And I interviewed Kathy a few weeks ago about this. So look for another podcast, and maybe we'll put in the description a link to that other podcast where I interview you about your weekly review. Which is amazing. You do it like clockwork, and you have for the last how many days? I know the years, but how many days do you know the
Oh, it's 200 and like 30. I'm at 237 weeks or something like that now.
7 weeks straight of doing a weekly review, which is part of her planning process, you guys. The other thing that you do consistently, you found a schedule that worked for you because you worked full time. We were talking about doing writing blogs and doing things like that to let people know about you. And you said, with my work schedule, I can't consistently write every day. Certainly, I can't write every week, not even every 2 weeks. But you said I can do it every 3 weeks. So not even once a month. You said every 3 weeks I can write a blog. And you're a really, really good writer, by the way. So, yeah. So tell us a little bit about, just very briefly about that. And can people sign up for your newsletter at newpathpro.com?
Yes, there's a blog page at newpathpro.com, and there's an area where you can sign up to receive my posts every 3 weeks in your email inbox. That's one of the things that I love about PEI as well, is because we're offering people the freedom to find what works for them. And I think that is the key to any system that gets put in place. That, Barbara's famous question, it's not what should you do, it's what will you do? And I think a lot of people are uncomfortable to find that out and figure that out. We all want things to work out quickly. But sometimes there's an investment in time and energy that needs to happen in order to find out what that means for you. And once you do figure it out, and you're not necessarily going to figure it out the first time you try something, but it's important to figure out what didn't work so that you don't duplicate the same incorrect effort the second time. So if you really take the time and figure out what's not working, you use that information to help move you closer to what will. And my weekly review has been an evolving process for years. I mean, it does not look exactly the same as it did at the beginning of those 4.5 years. And everyone should feel comfortable and feel like they have permission to make those kinds of changes. It's not an indication of a failure on your part. It just means something has changed and it needs to be adjusted. We adjust throughout our lives for many things. We need to accept that that's just another element of it, and that you have permission to change and make it work for you.
Not only do you have permission, but in our world, we have to. So we talk often about what we call the 4 questions. When someone wants to know, is it reorganizing, we'll say, how do you know if something is productive? Number 1 is, does it work? Number 2 is, do you like it? Sometimes something works, but you just kind of barrel yourself through it. You don't really like it, which means you're not going to do it for long. And 3 is, does it work for the others it impacts? Because we are working in teams, things affect our families, our team members, etc. And then the 4th one is, can you recover quickly? And people often say, well, what does that mean? Well, it means that things change. Your work schedule changes, your health changes, your relationships change, or whatever. And so we always say, every 6 months you ask, does it still work? Do I still like it? Does it still work for the people it impacts? And can I still recover quickly? And if the answer is no, it doesn't mean it was wrong before. It means you're changing. And if you're not changing, you're not growing. And I just want to say that also means we all make mistakes. Perfectionism is one of our biggest stumbling blocks because we don't want to launch something. And so, Kathy, that's one of the things I applaud you for, because you are so quick to try things right away. And that's how we learn. So you've been a wonderful role model.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I have a few things to wrap up with, but I'll give you the last word, Kathy, before I do my last word. But what do you want to leave people with? People that are maybe considering becoming a certified productive environment specialist or even a productivity consultant. What advice would you have for them?
If you feel drawn to this, there's a reason. And if you feel yourself pulled to help other people, and you believe already in the concepts and the systems that PEI uses, you cannot go wrong to consider CPS certification. You can do it. It is set up in such a way that you can integrate it into your life. And there's no deadline, there's no timeline, but the value that you get from it, not just the value that you'll be able to pass on to other people, but the value that you will get from it as an individual is already invaluable right there. But then you're learning systems, you're gaining a community of other CPSs that you can lean on as you utilize what your certification brings you, and you take it to other people. You've got a CPS community behind you. You've got the entire PEI community behind you. It's just been a fabulous affiliation for me for the last 8+ years, and I just absolutely not one iota of regret from the get-go. It's just been a fabulous opportunity for me, and I've loved it. Both of you, Andrea, Barbara, there is no way any CPS could possibly thank you enough for what you've created and made possible for us. So we are all grateful for that.
Thank you, Kathy. Thank you for sharing that.
Kathy.
And it's so funny you just said that. You said you even learned things and became more organized. And when I came into Barbara's program, I was not an existing professional organizer. Like I said, I didn't even know it existed. So I came in and learned. I felt like I was a pretty organized person, but I learned so much. I learned Barbara's systems. But when we have existing professional organizers who are already relatively organized and they teach other people, when they come in and they learn things and they're like, wow, I didn't even know we could do it this way. And it's amazing. It's not out there. It's not mainstream the way that, Barbara teaches, the way the system that she created all those years ago that helps people who have tried everything. And there's finally hope. So anyway, if you guys are watching this and you're interested in learning more about the Certified Productive Environment Specialist program, you can go to becomeaspecialist.com. There is an automated webinar on there. Barbara and I are the teachers on that webinar. It's about 40 minutes, but it'll give you a little bit of each of our stories and kind of what the CPES program is. That is a great place to start. And then, so those would be for what we call our organizers, or people who want to be an organizer. And then for our organizees, people who want to get organized, as well as the organizers, we also invite you to come to our upcoming webinar, productiveenvironment.com/webinar. Go ahead to that page and sign up for our upcoming webinar. It is free, and you will learn a ton of stuff on that webinar. So that is all we have for you guys today. And it was a lot. And Kathy, you are so easy and fun to interview. So thank you for being our guest today. And for those of you that watch our pep talk each week, we share comments on the screen, and Kathy is always on. Kathy is live with us. She's always on, and she always posts a comment. And we appreciate that, Kathy. So some of you may recognize her from that as well. So thank you for joining us. Any last word, Barbara, before I hit end?
I think it would be negligent if I didn't say, productive environment was based on the words clutter is postponed decisions, which was what launched Taming the Paper Tiger, which kind of got all this going. And so if you have been thinking about being a consultant, don't postpone the decision to explore the options so that you can make an intentional decision and see how you can help other individuals increase their profit, their productivity, and their peace of mind.
Thank you, Barbara. And thank you, Liz Davidson Organizing. Shout out. She said, I agree. You can integrate the training into your life, and the training is invaluable. And Liz is a perfect example. She was an existing organizer for many years, had a very successful business, loved Barbara's teachings, taught some of the things to her clients that she got from Barbara's books. And then even she came into the program and was like, oh my goodness, there were some things I was missing. And now it all makes sense. It all comes together. So it's a beautiful thing. So thank you so much for joining us, everybody. We will put some links in the description of some things that we mentioned on here so that you can go check out Kathy's previous interview we did with her. And now I'm going to click end stream. So be sure to go explore the rest of our channel and like this video.
Bye.
And subscribe. Bye, everybody.